You saw it last night, didn't you? That pale gray shape frozen on top of your fence, eyes catching the porch light, tail hanging like a piece of old rope. Maybe you reached for the broom. Maybe you told yourself it was a giant rat, a pest, something to chase off before it got into the trash or under the shed. I want you to stop, because that ugly, hissing, slow-moving creature in your yard is quietly doing a job you have been paying good money to do badly. It is killing the ticks that carry Lyme disease, eating the rats you set traps for, and clearing the slugs off your garden for free every single night while you sleep. This used to be common knowledge. Farmers knew it. Your great-grandparents knew it. Somewhere in the last 70 years, we were taught to fear the very animal that was protecting us, and I want to know who taught us that and why. I found the trail in a document from 1612, written by a man most people only know from a cartoon, and it led me to a laboratory study that counted something nobody thought to count until 2009. Stay with me, because the most useful part, the thing you can set up in your own yard this weekend with stuff already in your garage, comes at the very end, and it works whether you have 2 acres or a tiny patio. Let me tell you how I got here. Because I did not start out as someone who defended opossums. I started out as someone standing in my backyard at 11 at night, holding a flashlight and a shovel, absolutely convinced the thing hunched by my compost bin was going to bite me and give me rabies. That was 3 years ago. I was so sure I was right that I never once questioned it. And that certainty, it turns out, was the most expensive thing I owned. Here is the first clue that cracked my whole idea open. I always believed opossums were walking disease bags. Everybody says it. But when I went looking for the actual rate of rabies in opossums, I found something that stopped me cold. Opossums almost never carry rabies, not because they are lucky, but because of their own bodies. A rabies virus needs a warm host to multiply. The opossum runs cool. Its body temperature sits around 94 to 97 degrees Fahrenheit, several degrees below a dog, a raccoon, or you. That temperature is simply too low for the rabies virus to thrive. Wildlife biologists will tell you your odds of finding a rabid opossum are so small it barely registers. The raccoon you think is cute and the stray cat you feed are both far more likely to carry it than the opossum you want to chase off with a broom. So the first thing I had believed my entire life was just wrong. Flat wrong. And that made me angry. Because if I was that wrong about the rabies, what else had I been told that was backwards? That question sent me digging. And the next thing I found was worse because it involved something that had already cost me money and made me sick. Let me tell you about the ticks. 3 summers ago, I pulled a tick off the back of my knee and spent the next month terrified I had Lyme disease. I bought the spray. I treated the yard with the chemical service, $40-some a visit, a man in a mask walking my grass with a tank. I bought the tick tubes. I did everything the modern world sells you to solve a tick problem, and I still found them on my dog, on my ankles, in the folds of my socks. Then I found a study out of the Cary Institute of Ecosystem Studies, published around 2009, led by a researcher named Rick Ostfeld. His team wanted to know which backyard animals actually reduced tick numbers and which ones spread them. So they did something tedious and brilliant. They took 6 different species, mice, chipmunks, squirrels, and opossums among them, and they counted how many ticks each animal killed by grooming. The opossum was the champion, and it was not close. Opossums are relentless groomers. They are constantly cleaning themselves, and when a tick climbs on looking for a meal, the opossum finds it and eats it. In that study, the researchers estimated that opossums groomed off and destroyed the overwhelming majority of the ticks that ever landed on them, roughly 96 of every 100. They calculated that in a single season, one opossum patrolling your area could be wiping out thousands of ticks. The number that got quoted for years was around 5,000 ticks in a season per opossum. Now, I want to be honest with you, because I promised myself I would only tell you what I could stand behind. Some scientists have since argued that number might be high, that the lab setup was not the same as a real backyard. Fair enough. But even the critics agree on the core finding opossums groom obsessively, and they kill a huge share of the ticks that find them. Whether it is 5,000 or 1,000, that is a lot of ticks not sinking into you, your grandkids, or your dog. And here's what got me. I had spent hundreds of dollars trying to buy a solution that was walking across my fence for free, and I had been chasing it away with a shovel. This is all very nice, but I do not have an opossum in my yard, or I have one and I do not know what to do about it, and I am not about to go buy a wild animal. So let me stop the history lesson right here, because this next part is built specifically for you, the person standing in the yard you already have, with the tools you already own, wondering if any of this actually applies to your life today. It does, and you do not need to buy a single thing. The first thing to understand is that opossums are what biologists call nomadic. They do not dig a permanent den and move in like a groundhog. They do not build a nest in your attic for years like a raccoon might. An opossum drifts. It uses a shelter for a few nights, cleans out the local pests, and moves along to the next spot. This is the single most reassuring fact I can give you, and it is the one nobody tells you. If an opossum passes through your yard, it is not an infestation. It is a free, temporary employee doing a shift and then clocking out. You do not need to remove it. You need to let it finish the job. So step 1 costs nothing. When you see one, do nothing. Turn off the outside light, go back inside, and let it work. That is not laziness. That is the whole method. 90% of what people do wrong is intervening at all. That is the moment this stopped being curiosity for me and started being something closer to outrage. If you find yourself feeling the same pull, that hunger to go deeper into the things that actually work, the forgotten knowledge that nobody is packaging and selling. I put a lot of what I dug up into a digital book called First Fixes. There is also a second volume, Deep Leverage, and a complete collection called The Full Stack, for the people who want the whole picture in one place. You will find the details in the description below. I wrote them for exactly the person who just got angry about a tick and a shovel and wants to stop paying for problems that nature already solved. Because a single free animal was outperforming the whole tick control aisle at the hardware store. So I kept pulling the thread, and the next clue took me all the way back to the very first Englishman who ever wrote the word down. Here is where the trail gets old, really old. I wanted to know when we first started paying attention to this animal, so I went looking for the earliest written record, and I found it in the writings of Captain John Smith. Yes, that John Smith from the Jamestown colony in Virginia. Around 1612, he wrote a description of a strange new creature the local Powhatan people had a name for. He wrote that it had a head like a swine, a tail like a rat, and was the size of a cat, and that the female carried her young in a pouch on her belly. That is the first known description of an opossum in the English language, more than 400 years ago. The word itself comes from the Powhatan language, something close to opossum, meaning white animal or white beast. The people who lived on this land long before us already had a name for it, already knew it, already lived alongside it. This is North America's only marsupial, the only pouched mammal on the entire continent north of Mexico. It has been here, doing this exact job, for tens of millions of years, longer than the saber-toothed cats, longer than the mammoths, all of which died out while the humble opossum just kept going. Think about that for a second. This animal outlasted the giants. It survived ice ages and extinctions and everything the continent threw at it. And it did it by being the ultimate cleanup crew, eating what other animals would not, surviving on scraps, and moving on before it ever wore out its welcome. The early American farmers knew its value too. In old rural households, the opossum was part of the landscape, an accepted neighbor that kept the barn free of rats and the garden free of pests. Nobody in 1800 was paying a monthly service to do what the opossum did for nothing. So I had a 400-year-old record proving we once knew this animal. I had a modern study proving it works, which left me with the question that had been building this whole time. If people knew, if the science backs it up, if it has been living beside us since before Jamestown, how did we all end up so afraid of it? Somebody had to teach us to forget. And when I found out who benefited from that forgetting, it changed how I looked at my whole backyard. Let me show you what the opossum actually eats, because this is where you start to understand who did not want you to know. An opossum is a walking pest control unit. It eats ticks, as I told you, but it also eats slugs and snails that destroy your garden. It eats cockroaches and beetles. It eats overripe, fallen fruit that would otherwise rot and draw flies. It eats carrion, the dead things that would stink and spread disease. It eats mice, and it eats rats. It will even eat venomous snakes, copperheads and rattlesnakes included. And I am going to come back to that because that part is almost unbelievable and it is real. Now sit with the rat part for a moment. What do most people do about rats and mice around the house? They buy poison, little green blocks, bait stations, the whole industry. Americans spend an enormous amount every year on rodent control, hundreds of millions of dollars poured into chemicals to kill rats that a free-roaming opossum would happily hunt for you. But here is the cruel twist I did not see coming, and it is the heart of the whole thing. When you put out rat poison, the rat does not die instantly. It wanders off, poisoned, slow, easy to catch. And then the opossum, the very animal that would have controlled those rats, naturally eats the dying rat, and the poison moves up the chain into the opossum. This is called secondary poisoning, and it kills opossums, hawks, owls, foxes, and family cats and dogs every year. Wildlife rehabilitators pull in these animals bleeding internally from poison they never touch directly. So follow the money with me here. You are sold a poison to kill rats. The poison also kills the free predator that was keeping the rats down for nothing. With that predator gone, the rats come back stronger, and so you buy more poison. It is a loop, and you are paying for every turn of it. And the animal that could have broken the loop is lying dead behind your shed. That is when it clicked for me. Nobody sat in a boardroom and decided to make you fear the opossum on purpose. But an entire industry grew up around selling you the solution to a problem nature was solving for free, and a scared homeowner who chases off the free help and reaches for the paid product is a very, very good customer. Fear sells sprays. Fear sells poison. Fear sells the monthly service with the man in the tank. Comfort with an ugly gray marsupial sells nothing at all. We were not lied to, exactly. We were just never told the truth, because the truth was not profitable. And the quiet cost of that silence is the money leaving your wallet every month and the ticks still finding your ankles. Which brings me to the snakes, and to a discovery in a laboratory that honestly sounds like science fiction. For a long time, people noticed something odd. Opossums could get bitten by venomous snakes, copperheads, rattlers, and just shrug it off. They eat these snakes. A venom that would send you or me to the hospital barely phases them. Scientists wanted to know why. The answer is a protein. Researchers, including a scientist named B.J. Lips, studied a compound in opossum blood that came to be called lethal toxin neutralizing factor. In laboratory tests, this opossum peptide neutralized venoms not just from snakes, but from scorpions and other toxins. Studies have shown it protected against doses of venom that would otherwise be deadly. Scientists have looked at it as the possible basis for a cheap, universal anti-venom that could one day save lives in parts of the world where snakebite kills tens of thousands of people every year. Let that land. This slow, hissing creature you wanted to hit with a shovel is carrying, inside its own blood, a molecule that medical researchers think could become a life-saving medicine for the whole human race. And we call it a pest. I remember standing in my kitchen reading about that peptide, and I felt genuinely ashamed of that night with the flashlight and the shovel. I had been ready to kill something that outranks me in almost every way that matters out there in the dark. It had better disease resistance, better pest control instincts, and blood that might one day save a child from a snake bite, and I thought I was the smart one in the yard. But maybe you are thinking what I thought next. Step 2. Also free. Stop making your yard hostile to it. If you have been putting out rat poison, this is the week to stop. I know that feels backwards. But remember the loop. The poison kills the predator that controls the rats. And then you have more rats. Pull the bait stations. Use snap traps indoors if you must, tucked where only a rat can reach, and let the opossum handle the outdoors. You will spend less and get better results. And you will stop poisoning the owls and foxes and neighborhood cats in the process. Step 3. Still free, and this is the one that surprised me most. Check your yard for the things that accidentally harm them and fix those, because a healthy opossum is a working opossum. Loose netting over a garden bed, the plastic rings from a six-pack, the open mouth of a deep window well, string from a tarp, these are the traps that catch wildlife. 10 minutes walking your yard, picking up loose plastic and netting does more good than anything you could buy. And step 4, the one that actually invites them in, water. A simple, shallow dish of clean water, set in a quiet corner near cover under a shrub, beside the shed, along a fence line. Not fancy. An old pie tin works. In dry weather, a reliable water source is the single most attractive thing you can offer. And unlike food, it will not draw in the wrong crowd or make anything dependent on you. You are not feeding it. You are just giving it a reason to patrol your patch instead of the neighbors. Notice what is not on this list. No feeding stations, because feeding wild animals makes them bold and dependent and draws raccoons and rats you do not want. No traps to catch and relocate them, which is often illegal, usually deadly for the animal, and pointless since another one will drift through next week anyway. No purchase, no professional, no product. Just stop fighting the free help and give it a bowl of water and a clear path. I did exactly this. I stopped the poison. I put a shallow dish of water by my back fence under the forsythia. I walked my yard and cut away some old netting I had forgotten about. And within a couple of weeks I had a regular gray visitor working my yard 3 or 4 nights a week. That summer I pulled fewer ticks off my dog than I had in years. I cannot prove it was all the opossum, but I stopped paying the $40 spray service, and I was better off for it. So that is the practical part, working in the yard you already have. But I promised you the best piece for the very end, the thing I found buried in the old records that ties this whole trail together and gives you the one move that changes everything. Here it is. When I went back through the historical material, past John Smith, into the old agricultural writing and the way rural families actually lived with these animals, I kept noticing one detail that our modern pest control mindset completely erased. The old-timers did not try to attract opossums with food, and they did not try to drive them out. They did something smarter. They made a single quiet corner of their property permanently welcoming and then left it completely alone. A brush pile, a wood pile that never got fully used, an old crate turned on its side in the shade behind the barn, a little zone of undisturbed cover that the animal could rest in during the day and return to between patrols. That is the secret, and it is almost laughably simple. You do not attract an opossum with a meal. You keep one by offering shelter and leaving it undisturbed. A wild predator will patrol the ground around a safe daytime resting spot, and if you give it that safe spot, it adopts your yard as part of its route. So this weekend, here is the whole method in one move. Pick the quietest, least used corner of your yard behind the shed, along a back fence, wherever you rarely walk. Take the branches from your last trimming, or a few logs, or an overturned wooden crate, and build a loose, low pile with gaps an animal could tuck into. Put your shallow water dish nearby. Then, and this is the part that matters most, never disturb it. Do not clean it up. Do not shine lights on it. Do not check on it. You are building a $5 5-minute wildlife shelter out of yard waste you were going to haul away anyway, and in return you get a night shift pest patrol that eats ticks, hunts rats, clears slugs, and never sends you a bill. That is it. That is the thing our great-grandparents knew and we forgot. Not a product, not a spray. A brush pile in a quiet corner and the discipline to leave it be. The Powhatan had a name for this animal 400 years ago. The colonial farmers kept it around on purpose. The laboratory in 2009 proved what it does. And all of that knowledge got buried under a marketing story that taught you to reach for the broom instead of the brush pile. Here is what I want you to feel before you go. You were not born afraid of the opossum. You were taught to be. And that fear was taking something from you, money out of your pocket, control over your own yard, and a quiet partnership with an animal that has been on your side the whole time. Tonight, you got it back. If you are the kind of person who would rather trust 400 years of proof and a bowl of water than a $40 monthly spray and a mask, then you already understand what this channel is about. We dig up the things that worked, the things that got quietly buried because nobody could sell them to you, and we hand them back. Now I want to hear from you. When you saw that opossum on your fence or by your trash cans, what did you think it was? And be honest, did you ever go for the broom or the shovel like I did? Tell me in the comments, and tell me what part of the country you are watching from, because I want to know where these gray night workers are still on patrol. Leave a comment, even one line. This is the kind of thing worth passing to the person who reads it next. And if you want more of this, the old methods, the forgotten common sense, the tricks that big convenient products quietly replace, subscribe and stay with me, because the next thing I dug up is about a common weed growing in your own yard right now that people once paid good money for at the pharmacy, and once you see it, you will never mow over it the same way again. Before you go, if this video helped, there's a deeper version waiting for our members. You can ask me your own question and a real person answers, and you'll be among thousands of folks just like you. Point your phone's camera at the code on screen. It takes less than a minute, and you can cancel any time, no risk.